Hey everybody, welcome. I am Kevin Clark. It is 1:01 Eastern time right now. We are live, so markets are down about 4.5% right now. So I appreciate you taking the time to learn more about what we're going to talk about today, because I'm sure your phone is ringing off the hook with concerned clients. Let me make sure we're sharing the right screens here. We're not. All right, now we should be. Okay. I'm Kevin Clark. I'm the CEO of the PlanConfidence Corporation, also known in the industry as the ERISA Nerd, one of the posters behind me. Today, we're going to talk about becoming that held away hero. Specifically how you can easily and more importantly, compliantly give 401k advice to all of your clients, which the past week or so has probably never been more important than it is as it is right now. So before we start, this is what our lawyers are making us say. Obviously, the standard, no legal, tax, or financial advice. Also, the meeting today is specifically designed for independent investment advisors. Whether you're state registered or SEC registered, it doesn't really make a difference, but it is for IARs. So if you're, a FINRA broker, or you're an insurance agent or a broker, you don't have a 65, or you're not affiliated with a registered investment advisory firm, I can save you 44 minutes of your time. Because today we're going to talk about getting paid for working with the held away asset services, which you can only do if you're an investment advisor. And then also, if you do work for a large RIA, make sure that you check their policies and procedures, because they may differ from anything I'm talking about today. You're going to see why in a little bit. So just make sure, just because I say what you can and can't do, doesn't mean your firm is going to allow it. So with that, let's move on. Oh, and by the way, too, if you have any questions at any point in time, just type them in that questions box. We used to be able to open microphones, but go to meeting or go to webinar doesn't allow it anymore. So just type in there. We also lost one person, so they must have been insurance or FINRA rep. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to discuss why held away assets are actually perceived as risky by the largest wirehouses and largest firms that are out there, why they won't give advice, which creates a tremendous opportunity for you as the independent advisor. We're also going to discuss why it's hard to scale and how you could literally de-risk everything in your practice so you could thrive in this market. And finally, I'm going to do my best to answer any of those questions. So again, if you have any, please type them in at any point in time. Make sure we're all on the same page. Let's talk about what we mean when we say held away. It's any asset that's outside of your current custody and control. I use the term 401k, quite liberally as we talk about held away assets, because it is the largest held away asset by far than any other held away account that you might find. But it really could be anything that you just cannot move under your custody or control right now. And at PlanConfidence, we're literally on a mission to make it as easy for you as the advisor to work with these held away assets as you're currently working with your brokerage accounts or IRA accounts or anything like that. And there's been a few firms, including ours, that is really starting to push the technology in this space to help you out, which we're going to discuss towards the end. Before we do, let me give you a few reasons. If you're not working in this, or maybe if you are working in this field right now, why you should be looking to scale, why you should be looking from working with 10, 20, 30 people to working with 300, 3,000, 30,000 people, which sounds absurd, but it's extremely easy to do once you realize how we can help you. But let me give you a few reasons that you should be looking to do that. In fact, here's 12.4 trillion reasons, because there's currently over $12 trillion, maybe less after the last week or so. But there's $12.4 trillion according to the latest statistics in regards to the money that's currently in held away accounts right now, specifically employer-sponsored defined contribution plans. It's $12 trillion that you could be working with and getting paid on right now. $12 trillion of future rollovers to your firm. And if that's not enough, there's literally over 115 million hardworking Americans with money in their held away accounts right now. I'm literally going to have to get my shirt. You know, I use the word hashtag help 100 million all the time. I need to do help 115 million. But if you think about it, every trade journal I read talks about the future shortfall of financial advisors in the next decade. You know, that there's going to be X amount retiring and we don't have, you know, Y enough coming in to replace them. So you're going to have to learn how to work with more clients if you really want to thrive in this business. And ask yourself, if you had a way to provide advice and management for your held away accounts that didn't take up much of your time, kept you uber compliant, and allowed you to get paid, literally how many of the 115 million Americans that are out there, how many do you want as clients? You know, do you want 100 more, 1,000 more, you know, 10,000 more? You know, it's really up to you. And here's an awesome statistic to know. 74 participants that were polled want professional advice for their held away accounts. Specifically, this one was 401ks. 77% of that 74% are willing to pay somebody to manage their 401k account. Why shouldn't it be you? That means out of the 115 million American out there, there's literally 65 million Americans as we speak, probably more now after this week, that are willing to pay you to help them with their 401k. Again, that's 65 million Americans, you know, that your marketing dollars, you know, need to be attracting, need to be finding out. And this is the conversation that you have with them. Studies show that an advisor can add 400 basis points of alpha net of fees year over year. That's literally 4% better performance, 4% net of any of the fees that are being charged. That's the value that you're going to provide your clients. It's a powerful talking point, especially if your clients are questioning your fees, which they might in upward markets. In downward market right now, I don't think they'd be questioning anybody's fees if they were getting help on their 401k. That's a powerful talking point. So knowing all this, why did I say earlier that the largest firms out there, they just don't provide 401k advice? You know, why wouldn't they want their clients to have a 4% better return year over year? Well, the largest firms out there with the highest paid lawyers, they know that if you provide non-discretionary advice for a 401k, for a fee, or if you trade any of the 401k accounts with discretion, it makes you an ERISA fiduciary. And the courts have called being an ERISA fiduciary the highest duties known to law. And when you're working with these held away assets, you actually invite an additional regulator. You know, plus, you know, the SEC or state regulator, you've now invited the Department of Labor into your life. That's right, the DOL actually gets to tell you now how you're going to work with your clients. It's not just the SEC or your state if you're state registered. And here's what you need to comply with. I told you now I was an ERISA nerd. Here's here's all the ERISA documents. 4 binders worth. Really, you only need to comply right now with the top 2 binders that are on there. The bottom 2 are what the Biden administration has proposed in terms of changes. But the top 2 are what you currently have to abide with. And the bottom 2, you may have to abide with because those have actually been paused by the courts right now. Now, there's a lot of similarities between being an SEC or state registered fiduciary and an ERISA fiduciary. So when you're working with some of those held away accounts, you just need to abide by Reg BI. Some of them you need to abide by Reg BI and the DOL rules. But you only need to operate under the higher standards of ERISA when working with an ERISA covered account, which ERISA, if you don't know, covers private sector retirement and insurance plans. So if you're working with a 401k, an HSA, an ESOP, a 403b plan, if it's in the private sector, you know, those are all covered under ERISA. Public sector 403b plans are not covered under ERISA unless they choose to opt into, which very few of them do. So you only need to abide by Reg BI rules if you're working with the public sector 403bs. But this is where it gets a little confusing. Just because the account's covered by ERISA doesn't mean you're automatically an ERISA fiduciary when you work with it. Since 1975, ERISA was written in 1974, went into effect January 1st, 1975. Since that date, the Department of Labor has used a 5-part test to determine if you operate as an ERISA fiduciary. The Biden administration was trying to change this 5-part test down to a 3-part test. But again, that's currently paused in the court system right now. So we're not sure if that's going to go into effect. So let's deal with what we know. This is what's on the books right now. This is the 5-part test. And you do need to be able to answer yes to all 5 of these boxes and be working with an ERISA covered account to be deemed an ERISA fiduciary. So example, let's say you're regularly providing advice, individualized advice to your client on how they should be managing their 401k. Maybe you're even helping them trade, the account, but you're not charging your client for that service. Then you're not an ERISA fiduciary because you can't check that first box of getting paid or charging a fee for the service that you're providing. So again, you do have to check all 5 boxes, and the account has to be covered by ERISA, and then you're deemed an ERISA fiduciary, whether you knew it or not, which also means you have to abide by the Department of Labor rules, whether you know them or not. But before we get into what they are, let's look at a couple differences between being an ERISA fiduciary and a SEC fiduciary. Main difference has to deal with the conflict of interest. This is one of the things the big firms don't like. Under the Investment Advisor Act, you can have conflicts of interest as long as they're disclosed to your clients before your client opens an account. In fact, that's what your ADV is for, to check the box to make sure that you disclosed all that before they open anything. Under ERISA law, you're not allowed to have conflicts of interest. You need to mitigate all of your conflicts of interest. If you cannot mitigate the conflict of interest, you need to look for what's called a prohibitive transaction exemption, or PTE, if one's available. If there's not a PTE available to you, you need to walk away from that client. You're actually prohibited by law from working with that client. You don't have to do that as an SEC advisor. Now, another big difference, when you're a ERISA fiduciary, you have to start with a written prudent process that you follow with all your clients. Don't need to do that as an SEC advisor. And ERISA also requires that you diversify all of the individualized accounts, which is, again, not necessary under SEC rules. And then here's the granddaddy. One of the main reasons the largest companies out there are not going to be giving 401k advice, and it's the difference in the legal recourse for your clients. Your ERISA covered clients have direct access to the courts if their accounts ever lose money. Well, let me say that again. Your ERISA covered clients can sue you in the court system if they ever lose money. In fact, they have access to the federal courts. It's not even a state court. They get to go to federal court because ERISA is a federal law. Ultimately, they could go to the United States Supreme Court and any other rulings if they chose to, and some have gone that far. Now, as an SEC fiduciary, you or your firm are not legally liable for any of your clients' losses unless obviously there was any type of, fraud or, breach of fiduciary duty or anything like that. But, and this is a big but, your clients don't have access to the court system, not state or federal court system. All of your agreements and all of your custodial agreements, every single custodian you work with, they all have mandatory arbitration clauses. Your clients couldn't sue you if they wanted to. And the agreements prohibit your clients from using any part of that judicial system. They have to do mandatory arbitration. And it specifically prohibits your clients from filing any type of class action lawsuit, which is granted under ERISA. So think about it. If you're at a firm, you got 20,000 advisors out there in the field, and just one of them screws up, and one of them will. It's 20,000 people out there unsupervised. They screw up an ERISA account. You can rest assured that a good attorney, hell, even a bad attorney, they're going to make this into a class action lawsuit and start looking into what the other 19,999 advisors in the field are doing. So it's a very legitimate fear for the largest companies out there to have. And it's a legitimate reason why the largest financial firms will tell their advisors to never, ever, ever put anything in writing in regards to somebody's 401k plan. And one of the other things that the largest firms know that you may or may not know, if you lose that lawsuit, because again, ERISA covered clients have access to the federal court system. If you lose it, you're personally liable for damages. It's not your firm. You can't just shut down your firm, open a new one or anything. You have to pay back all of your clients' losses, any of the missed gains, any of the fees or commissions you earned over the time frame, anything else that the courts decide to ding on, punitive damages or anything, and it all has to be paid back with your personal assets. Now here's a tip from the ERISA Nerd. Double check your E&O insurance policy to make sure it covers advice and trading for ERISA covered accounts. A lot of policies just won't cover it, or they may actually require an ERISA rider for you to be covered under their policy. So if you're already in the space or thinking about it, double check that E&O coverage, because anything that E&O doesn't cover has to be paid out of your personal assets. Now, let me pause here because my intent's not to scare you, but it's to educate you on the risks and give you a reason why you as an independent advisor have a huge opportunity in front of you. In fact, you have a $12.4 trillion opportunity in front of you. $12.4 trillion you could work with right now that the largest financial firms out there will not. Now I'm going to quickly go through how you can be compliant and how you can de-risk that practice in a little bit. But let me give you one other reason why the largest firms just cannot work with these held away assets. Since the employer is the one choosing all the investment options and not you as the advisor, the employer chooses how often the employees can trade, when they can access their money, et cetera. And every plan is different. It's been a very manual process to compliantly work with these held away accounts, which could make it extremely time consuming if you got a firm with, 20,000 advisors, possibly hundreds of thousands of clients, if not 1 million plus accounts that would want advice. It's never been able to be, scaled before. It was all manual to do the advice and management, and way too cumbersome for a large firm to handle in their home office, which, as we discussed earlier, leaves that huge opportunity for you. So let's take a look what's required when you're dealing with these ERISA covered accounts. Now, there's a few items that your firm needs prior to working with any of these, held away ERISA covered accounts. The first and the main one of the things that I've never seen any firm have that we work with is to have a written prudent process in place. And let me stop you before you go, oh, we got an IPS, we have an ADV or whatever. None of those count. You specifically need to have a written prudent process in regards to how you're going to work with held away accounts. Understand ERISA says you must have this. Not that you should have it, or not that would be a good idea if you had one. It's an absolute requirement. Once you have it in writing, you need to follow it each and every time you advise or trade that account. And you need to keep the documentation that you did follow it for at least 6 years. First thing you're going to ever be asked for if you get sued or audited is a copy of your written prudent process. Then you're going to be asked to show the documentation that you followed it. So if you're doing quarterly rebalancing, you better have 4 pieces of data or 4 file folders or 4 something for each client that you have showing that, you did the proper reviews and all that for each client before you traded or before you told them what to do. Now, your written process needs to describe how you're gonna get the complete fund lineup from your client. There is no national database of the holdings for a 401k account. So describe in your written prudent process how you're going to get it, how you're going to review all the available investment options in the plan. You can't just view 1 or 2 items. You literally have to review all of them to make sure your process is prudent. How are you going to overlay your asset allocation models or investment strategies or whatever against what the employer is choosing for your clients, essentially how you're going to create that advice for your clients, and ultimately how you're going to deliver the advice. Are you calling your client, emailing it to them, discretionary trading, so on and so forth. Finally, how's the advice going to be implemented? Specifically who's going to be trading the accounts here, and how often, is this going to take place? Now realize best execution is required under, Reg BI, under the SEC rules, as well as under the ERISA law. The Department of Labor requires best execution. So you need to make sure that, you're delivering your advice to all your clients at the same time, especially in markets like we just seen in the past 10 days or so. If you got caught sending your best client advice, on the first day of it, and your worst client just got advice today, you're in big trouble. You put your house up for sale soon because you just failed on the best execution side of things. And then the biggest thing, and then the most time-consuming thing that is going to occur when you're working with these held-away assets is the documentation. You need to make sure you follow your process each and every time, and you document that you followed your process each and every time. There's an old saying in the court system: if it wasn't documented, it never happened. Ask any lawyer and they'll tell you that's exactly how the courts see it. Now, if you have a written proof process, if you could show you followed it each and every time, you have 6 years worth of your documentation, you're going to be about as bulletproof as you possibly can be if your clients ever lose money and they try to sue you in the federal courts. If you get sued and you can prove, here's my written process, hopefully by having your client even sign off on it before you even started working with them, that's a best practice. It's not required, but it's a best practice. And you have it documented that you followed it each and every time. The only thing a plaintiff lawyer is possibly going to be able to do is try to prove that your process is not prudent. They can no longer get you just because you didn't have a written prudent process, and now you're instantly liable. Doesn't matter if it was prudent or not, it wasn't in writing. So you don't want to be responsible for losses. You want to force them to prove that your process isn't prudent is the only way to win. And as long as you're not trading with the, sun, moon, and stars or a Ouija board or something like that, you're probably going to be okay. If you don't have a written process, or if you cannot prove that you followed your written process, it's not going to matter if it was prudent or not. You could be personally liable for all of your clients' losses. And they've lost a lot of money in the past 2 weeks. And this is the importance of making sure that you have documenting everything. And once you got this down to that science, how many of the 115 million Americans you want to work with? And I'm going to show you how you can easily work in this market by being uber compliant, being able to scale your advice. So it takes you the same amount of time, whether you got 1 client or 1,000 clients, in here. Specifically, I'm going to show you how to scale your held away advice and de-risk your practice with PlanConfidence. Because we created software as a service, or SaaS, or SaaS, or however you pronounce that nowadays, that does all the research for you. It does the advice creation, it does the advice delivery, and it literally documents everything each and every time. Now, before we go on, I want to let you know, I actually have been an investment advisor just like yourself since 1997. The idea of PlanConfidence came out of the 2008 financial crisis when my clients, I had a practice outside of Chicago, they were asking me, Kevin, what am I supposed to do with my 401k money? You're handling my IRA, I appreciate that. Please tell me how I should be handling my money. Specifically, my parents asked for help. On the screen right now is a picture of my mom and dad. My mother was an accounts receivable manager. My father was a union electrician in a steel plant outside of Chicago. They both were relying on me to tell them exactly what to do with their 401k monies so they could confidently retire. And that hit home. And that's when I created a very manual process. Now, the process that I used back then in 08, we've converted all this into software because I went to a buddy of mine and said, Mark, you're a software developer. Let me show you how I get the 3-page PDF I send to your wife so she can manage her own 401k plan. How do we make this into software? So everything's built into the software and it's automated for you to use. We actually start with that required written prudent process. Your clients can actually click I agree to all of our legalese, including acknowledging the written prudent process, There's an ERISA fiduciary acknowledgement that's required, a fee schedule if you're using our billing system, etc. We time, date, and IP address stamp every time they click I agree, and we use this as their signature. Now, all of our technology is an SEC registered IRA, an internet only RIA. We've actually been audited by the SEC, and they absolutely loved this aspect of our service of making everybody acknowledge everything that we have out there. Now you get an advisor dashboard, so you can quickly add any of the plan or participant information directly into our database. Even if you type with 2 fingers, it's going to take you less than a minute per client to get them added to our database. We've made it extremely fast and extremely easy for you to use. We then upload the fund lineup directly into our database. We've actually created a proprietary scoring algorithm that uses 15 pieces of data to score, do the research on every single fund on there. We actually rescore all the funds every single quarter because you have a duty under ERISA. Once you start working with any of these clients, you have an ongoing duty to monitor and remove any funds under ERISA. You can't just trade it once and then trade it again a year from now. You always have to do that research before you do everything. You have to prove that you're monitoring on an ongoing basis. And it's for the lifetime of your client unless you have an agreement that shows a start date and an end date. Now, we're then going to figure out all the missing categories, assign proxies to each that actually be displayed to your clients if advice doesn't line up what their employer has chosen for them and your own advice. And we actually have the only software available in the whole universe. I used to say the whole world, whole universe. I'm pretty confident in that. That will allow you to program our database with your investment strategies. Doesn't matter if you're running strategic allocations, tactical allocations, both at the same time. Our software can handle it. So if you're managing your own client IRA money, we could easily and quickly duplicate that advice for all of your clients' held away accounts. We even let your clients know when your advice deviates because their employer does not have investment options that you want them to use, which is an awesome feature if you're going to sit down with your clients and do a review, because it starts a very early conversation about the differences between an IRA, where you have all the custody and control of what goes in there, versus the 401k, where the employer is the only one with the custody and control of what your clients could use. And if you don't manage money, we actually have 9 pre-built models that you can use right out of the gate. We've got 5 strategic and 4 semi-tactical models that are available for you to use right now. Now, regardless if you're using our models or your own models, your client also has the ability to customize the advice specific to them. So if you have that one client, they want to be aggressive, but they don't want to put any money in emerging market or small cap stocks, great, our system can handle that. We have the ability to create and deliver your advice to all of your clients at the same time, fully compliant and at scale. The only question you need to answer is, who are we delivering the advice to? We have the ability to deliver all the advice to your clients directly through what we call a participant dashboard. It's optional, you don't have to use it. Now here, your client's going to be able to see any of the new advice, your contact information, picture, firm, all that stuff. We're looking to brand you. In fact, under our pro plan, we even have the ability to add your logo, your color scheme, all that to make it look like your current website. We want your clients thinking of you when they think of their 401k. We want your clients calling you when they have questions about their plan. You don't want them calling Fidelity or Vanguard or any, whoever's, currently responsible for the plan, because you're just inviting more competition into your clients' lives at that point. And if you don't want your clients to access the participant dashboard, or maybe you work for a large firm where we don't have the selling agreement approved yet, we can deliver you all the advice. We literally send you a trade file for each and every one of your clients directly to your inbox. And then you could, just forward these on to your clients, cut and paste them into your own reporting, system or whatnot. Or maybe you're providing discretionary advice, and you're actually trading the accounts for your clients. Great, we send you the trade files. You literally just open the trade file and then you trade each and every one of the accounts to make it look exactly as it's on that trade file. Save you hours and hours of time because our software has done all the research, the advice creation, the advice delivery, and most importantly, the documentation. Unless all your clients are working for the same employer, it's the documentation that's going to take you the longest. And we do all that for you. All of our data is stored in the cloud. It's easily accessible if you're ever audited or sued. And we keep it longer than the 6 years that's actually required because it's the documentation that's the most important part of working with these held away accounts. And we've got that down to a science, the ability to do that research, advice creation, delivery, and documentation. The only thing left to decide, is who's implementing, specifically who is trading these accounts. If we're delivering the advice directly to your clients, they could easily log in and trade through whatever custodian is the one that's, using their plan. We even put a hyperlink, on the participant dashboard directly to their login page to make it as easy as possible for your clients to access the advice and then implement it, directly at Fidelity or Vanguard, wherever. However, if your clients don't want to do the trading, we've got 2 ways to make that easier for you as well too. First, we already mentioned, our system delivers you trade files directly to your inbox. You can manually input all those trades for your client. In fact, there's actually 2 fellow fintech companies in this space right now that's going to make that a lot easier for you. Pantera and Future Capital both have powerful software that allow you to take our trade files and mirror those direct trades into their platform. Their platform then delivers those trades to the custodian, so your clients don't have to log in and place their own trades. And if you don't want to do the trading at your firm, we can actually do it for you. We've got agreements with both companies. We'll program their software, monitor their trades till they're completed. You don't even need an agreement with them, as we're going to be trading through our agreement, and everything gets added to our trade blotter. We do the follow-up, all that. So having us do all the research, advice creation, delivery, documentation, and trading literally makes us the first TAMP for held away assets that has ever been in the space. You can literally outsource everything to us, including the ERISA fiduciary liability. So for the very first time, you actually have an option for a one-stop shop for all of your held away assets if you want it. Or you could use this piece by piece, make your job as easy as possible to compliantly scale all of that held away account work. We've got the ability to make you that held away hero. You're going to be the hero to all your clients, coolest kid in the neighborhood. And still you become more attractive and everyone's going to love you. Obviously, I'm kidding. Edward Jones, UBS reps, the big firms out there in your community, they're not going to love you. You're going to be getting paid for a service that they just cannot provide. So I know what you're thinking. Hey, this sounds amazing, Kevin. You're so smart and good looking, but how much does this cost? I don't blame you. That's the great news. Because all of our data is crowdsourced. We have the ability to keep our prices low and fair. We have 2 price points right now, a starter plan for $79 a month for your first 6 clients and a professional plan for $199 a month for your first 20 clients. This is the base price for our software to do all the research, advice creation, delivery, documentation. There's no additional charges from us if you or your clients are doing the trading. If we're doing the trading, then we charge, 25 basis points divided by 12 for your account, for your accounts to cover the Pantera or Future Capital costs. Now, most advisors that are having us do the trading, they use our billing system. We have a built-in billing system where we can charge a credit card, debit card, etc. They have the Pantera fees and stuff taken out of what their clients are paying, so it never costs the advisor any money to trade the accounts. We just send you, once a quarter, anything above and beyond what Stripe takes out, because we use Stripe to do the billing, what Pantera takes out, and then your fee is anything left over. And we've created PlanConfidence University, completely optional, not required, but it's 2 hours of pre-recorded videos divided into 4 tracks. We actually have an online quiz you could take, and if you get an 80% or higher, you get a 20% discount off that base price. That means the pro plan now is only $159 a month for your first 20 clients, or $63 a month for the starter plan for your first 6 clients. And maybe you're just getting started. You don't need to research the scale of, the ability to do the research, advice, documentation, delivery. In that case, we actually got something that's going to help you too. We've created 2 separate courses. Well, the courses are the same. One comes with documents, one doesn't. Literally, it's going to teach you everything and anything you need to know about working with these held away assets compliantly. Each course is 6 hours long, pre-recorded video. You literally can do them at your own pace. You got to listen to my voice for 6 hours. But it's actually been approved for 6.5 hours of CFP credits and 6 hours of the required 6 hours of CE IRA ethics credits. So if you're working in any one of the 22 states that actually require you to have 12-hour of CE credits right now, we can knock out your ethics portion, literally over the weekend. And if you're your own chief compliance officer, I encourage you to take the one with the sample documents, because you literally get the course and everything you need to write your own written prudent policy. Get everything, the verbiage to put in your ADV, your compliance manual, agreements, and all that stuff. I actually talked to a Texas advisor not too long ago who was paying $7,000 a year to do their annual required retrospective review. He took our course and he's now using our documents and templates from the $400 course for everything to do the review and then the required acknowledgement. And that annual required review is coming up at the end of June. So make sure you're on top of that. Our course with the documents has everything you need in there. And also, if you're still watching this far, we've only lost one person. I'm going to send you a $100 off coupon. You could be used with either course. So you could just get the course for $99, or for $299, you get the course and all the sample documents to make sure that you stay compliant. You can literally just fill in the blanks. So now it's $100 cheaper if you want to be that compliant held away hero. We have the ability to help scale, your business and get paid for it with that technology. We have the business to keep you compliant with our courses. We have the ability to make sure that you can easily, without putting any more unnecessary risk or work on your desk, through PlanConfidence. You have access to that $12.4 trillion market right now. Access to the 65 million Americans who are willing to pay you for your advice. My guess is that's probably gone up to 100 million Americans over the past 2 weeks that are willing to pay for advice. Access to a new continuous rollover, money that you could wait for, as well as a revenue stream right now while you're getting paid to wait for those rollovers. It's pretty cool, right? I hope everyone agrees. All right, I'm about to stop talking. I know I covered a lot in a short amount of time. So if you have any questions, again, use that questions box. I see there's a couple in there already. If you are not comfortable asking a question in a group setting like this, no worries. Feel free to email me, call, or text me. I will say calling is probably the worst way. I recommend scheduling a Zoom or a phone call. You're going to get a copy of the replay here in about an hour or so when it converts the recording. In the bottom of every single email I send out, there's always a button to access my calendar. So if you want to discuss your own firm, or you have questions maybe you don't want to ask in a group setting, I encourage you to just block off a half hour. Even if we don't need it, at least that's time's there. We don't have to play phone tag. All right, so let's open up the questions box. And anyone who's ever been on a webinar with me, I think it's because I'm getting older, the go to webinar box is always tiny when it comes to the questions. Okay, first question here. I am state registered. Will you work with me? Yeah, so yes. Well, yes. So we'll definitely work with you in terms of providing advice, doing the research, advice, delivery, documentation. There's 3 states out there right now, possibly 4. So for sure, Washington, Missouri, and Ohio will not allow you to trade the accounts, through Pantera or Future Capital. So we definitely can help you in terms of providing advice if you want your clients to do their own trading. If you're in one of those 3 states, Oregon, I heard rumors that they may or may not be cracking down on this. But if you're in, any one of those 3 or 4 states, we could definitely help you scale up the advice, have your clients do their own trading. If you're SEC registered in any of those states, then those laws don't apply to you. So we will work with you, but in this case, it says they're state registered, so I'm not sure what state you're in. If you're not in one of those 3 or 4 states, you know, you could use our advice, our training and everything. Okay, the question is, how do we trade the accounts? So we trade them, we simply have agreements with Pantera and Future Capital. We have our own agreements with both of them. So we could do the account trading for you through their system. The cool thing about their software is it doesn't have constructive receipt of custody, SEC custody rules, you know, where you cannot have the username or password for your clients. Otherwise, you need, it's not illegal under the SEC, but you need to have a surprise audit. You need to fill out ADV Part E. Unfortunately, part of that surprise audit, they literally, like, I hate to use the word harass, but they harass your clients. You know, send us a December 31st copy of your fidelity, you know, statement, blah, blah, blah. It's not pretty. More likely, though, advisors aren't doing it that way anyway because of the 2-factor authentication, which has taken on popularity over the past 3 or 4 years. All right, and then there's one final question in here. So in the next, you know, 30 seconds or so, as I'm answering this, if you can think of anything else, you know, feel free to ask a question. But the last one I see in here is, can I use this with 403B plans as well? Yeah, so again, I use the word 401k probably too much. Because it is the largest. I mean, by far, out of those, you know, $12 trillion, it's like $9 trillion of the dollars, and the rest is 403B, 457, and TSP money. Yes, we can work with anything that has a fund lineup. So any advisor, or even if an advisor creates their own fund lineup, we can work with it. What we don't want to get involved with is somebody comes to us and they go, hey, I got a SEP IRA at Fidelity, and I have access to, you know, a few hundred ETFs, thousands of stocks, you know, tens of thousands of mutual fund, you know, what should we use? You know, in that case, now we're going to say, go hire an advisor. Now, if they came to us, go, hey, we got a SEP IRA, we have access to these 200 ETFs, you know, what should we use? That's where we get involved. So if there's a fund lineup, so if it's an ERISA covered plan, there's an ERISA fiduciary who created a fund lineup. We upload that in our plan and then overlay your advice against that. So we could do it with 403Bs. We have advisors in here that are using us with variable annuities as well as variable life insurance. And those sometimes have, you know, 150 options that your clients could choose from, you know, because they're not subject to ERISA. So 403Bs, absolutely, because somebody already created a fund lineup. With that, I don't see any other questions. So I do want to thank you for staying this long into the webinar. If there's any way that I can help, or if you have any questions that we didn't get to, please reach out to me. With that, I will say, as I do with always, thank you for attending. I wish you continued success, and peace.